Welcome to all participants and thank you for joining us today. My name is Emily Palami-Pradicit. I am the founder and executive director of Manushaya Foundation, a feminist, women-led, innovative human rights organization that works for putting communities across Southeast Asia, and in particular in Thailand and Laos, at the center of decisions and policies which affect the human rights. So today, our discussion will reflect on the state of digital authoritarianism in Thailand over the past few years, and especially since the wake of the 2020 pro-democracy movement as a resistance to the 2014 coup. My own organization has been closely monitoring the situation as part of our digital rights portfolio. And we also team up with civil society across the region to form the ASEAN Regional Coalition to stop digital dictatorship and resist the grip of Southeast Asian government on our internet. Since 2020, we have been reporting on Thailand for Freedom of the Net, which is the global annual digital freedoms assessment by Freedom House. Through our work, we discovered that digital authoritarianism in Thailand has persisted over the past 5 years. It is clear that our online democracy is under attack in Thailand. The country also ranks behind all surveyed ASEAN countries, except for Vietnam and the junta-led Myanmar. All three countries are considered not free countries when it comes to online freedom. And it's important to note that not free is the worst rank a country could get. So today, we'll particularly look at the very worrying recent online dictatorship trends in Thailand, naming it repressive ICT laws and defamation laws, the weaponization of COVID-19, state-sponsored online disinformation, anti-fake news propaganda, AI-facilitated and state mass surveillance, control over tech companies and the media by the military-backed government, and of course, the criminalization of dissenting voices and human rights defenders for speaking the truth to power online. I won't go into details because I have been joined by amazing colleagues who have dedicated their careers to exploring this topic and who will offer insight on where Thailand currently stands on digital freedoms, the challenges that we are facing, and the way that Thai people can move and push for the way forward. So I will introduce the speakers one by one as I invite them to speak. And so the first speaker that I would like to invite with us today is Michael Castor. Michael is the Asia Digital Program Manager at Article 19. He's also the co-founder of Safeguards Defenders, a group helping human rights advocates protect civil liberties in Asia. Prior to Article 19, Michael had worked with civil rights defenders, minority rights groups, ICJ, and China Action. So Michael, can you please provide us with a big picture overview of digital authoritarian trends in Thailand, with a specific focus on the more recent laws and policies shaping internet governance? And it would be great if you could also provide us with some specific cases and numbers so that people could truly realize the negative impact of such repressive laws and policies on the ground. So over to you, Michael.
Thank you, Emily, and thank you for moderating, and a big thanks to Manushaya Foundation and Access Now for co-hosting this session alongside with Article 19, and obviously thanks to my fantastic fellow panelists here. I'm really honored to be speaking among such experts. The title of this session, as you all know, is Thailand, Digital Authoritarianism Rising, because sadly that really is the reality in today's Thailand. And indeed around much of Asia Pacific. For the sake of a common understanding of terms, I think for digital authoritarianism, I would draw from the scholarship, which offers a helpful typology defining a state that engages in surveillance, including through sophisticated targeted digital attacks, censorship, computational propaganda, that is social manipulation and disinformation, including through automation and other forms of inauthentic behavior, network interferences from small-scale bandwidth throttling to larger internet shutdowns, and finally, the fifth indicator, that of targeted persecution, intimidation, harassment, arrest, and imprisonment of online users. And in Thailand, we see that each of these characteristics are on display. And when we examine what has been happening in the country over the last few years, as Emily noted, we see a consistent policy of repression that is getting worse. Thailand engages in censorship and surveillance in increasingly sophisticated ways. For example, weaponizing the Computer Crimes Act, Thailand has also sought to pressure technology companies to remove increasing amounts of unwanted independent expression. And over the years, the Royal Thai Police, the Royal Thai Army, and other state-backed actors have used Italian hacking team malware, Israeli NSO groups Pegasus, and others to infect and spy on the mobile devices of opponents. Surveillance concerns such as these are particularly multiplied in Thailand's deep south, where network interferences have also taken place. All of these issues are further complicated by how technology companies operating in Thailand have responded, which, needless to say, has not been uniform and necessarily consistent. Thailand engages in computational propaganda through a number of strategies and a many thousands strong cyber army funded by the state, engaging in trolling and online harassment, not only to shape the narrative through myths or disinformation, but also to intimidate civil society actors, especially women human rights defenders. Recent litigation by two leading women human rights defenders, Ankana Nilapajit and Anshana Himina, seek to counter this malicious practice and is perhaps unprecedented in the region for civil society targets of state-backed online harassment pursuing strategic litigation. So these are just some snapshots of the current challenges in Thailand from a digital rights perspective, and my fellow panelists will go into a number of these in much more detail and expand on them. But in addition to these challenges as they've played out in practice, we've also seen a raft of new laws and policies being forced through that attempt to grant the state a veneer of legality while it pursues such activities not in compliance with Thailand's obligations under international law. Before turning to highlight a few of these recent legal challenges, it's worth reiterating what international human rights law says about permissible human rights limitations. Any restrictions on the right to freedom of expression and access to information or privacy must be provided for by law in pursuit of a legitimate aim and necessary and proportionate. Vague or overbroad restrictions are never permissible, and any restrictions must be specific, tailored, and the least intrusive means. This is often called the three-part test and used to assess the human rights compliance of national legislation. Well, when we apply this to much of Thailand's domestic legal framework, we see an ecosystem at odds with Thailand's international obligations. We've seen a number of new pieces of legislation coming out, for example, under the already highly flawed Computer Crimes Act, which Article 19 and others have previously analyzed and issued numerous recommendations for repeal or amendment. We've also seen new provisions under the Electronic Transaction Act being drafted, which further raise serious concerns over attempts by the state to interfere in the rights of freedom of expression, access to information, and privacy. And because what happens online does not stay online, restricting online space and expression and harassing online users often has correlations to increasing numbers of judicial harassment and arbitrary detention or physical abuse, including enforced disappearance and the presumed extrajudicial killings of several Thai YouTubers several years ago. So in particular, we are concerned by the 2021 notifications under the Ministry of Digital Economy and Society on computer traffic data, which expands on the Computer Crimes Act in a number of vague and overbroad ways. Section 5 expands the categories of service providers held liable under the law, including new categories for social media platforms and online application stores and artificial intelligence services, the last one an area where Manusha Foundation has been working a lot. These categories include a number of requirements for storing and handing over traffic data to the authorities. It also requires internet cafes and public internet access points to install CCTV cameras to monitor users. What's more, we see an obsessive focus on user identity verification at Section 8, which is a stark assault on the right to privacy, and Section 9, localization requirements on technology companies to designate contact persons, has gaping holes over limits of liability. Likewise, under the Electronic Transaction Act, a 2021 Royal Decree on Digital Platform Services, which is currently under further revision following public outcry, proposes to expand the scope of the Electronic Transaction Act in some alarming ways. And even if the final royal decree is scaled down from the earlier drafts, the intent of control is clear. it seems to expand the scope beyond what should be the Electronic Transaction Act's limited role over electronic and financial transactions online, and introduces some extraterritorial requirements holding any web platforms and their responsible parties under its jurisdiction, no matter where they are based, so long as the web platforms meet certain standards, including that they have Thai language interface or allow for Thai bot transactions. This type of extraterritoriality also risks multiplying and internationalizing censorship and self-censorship concerns. A previous version of the royal decree also included requirements on digital platform services to appoint local representatives in Thailand who would be held without any limitation of liability under the law. This is a drastic escalation in the assault on internet intermediaries and fly in the face of international norms designed specifically to protect intermediaries, to protect the freedom of expression and access to information online. And again, the royal decree places a premium on identity verification and state access of user data as part of a larger trend we're observing in Thailand of the state going after online anonymity and potentially setting the groundwork to expand regulation over encryption or the sale of circumvention tools. So we really need to be watching closely as the final draft of the royal decree is expected soon. But what we've seen in these examples, or what I hope to get across in them, is a state that already embraces a number of tools and tactics online and in the real world to censor, surveil, intimidate, and detain civil society, while turning a blind eye to ensuring a safe space online for marginalized communities. And with new laws and policies, sadly, we are likely to see these conditions getting worse. What we hope for from the international community is to be explicit with Thailand, especially the embassies with sway and corporate or industry groups and chambers of commerce, that they will not accept this patent deterioration in internet freedom and digital rights in Thailand. So I'll stop here, and I really look forward to the rest of the conversation.
Thank you very much, Michael. Thank you so much. As you said, the rising digital dictatorship, you explained it very well. There's an increasing number of cyber laws, and all the developments in 2021 are really worrying. And as you said, at the end, marginalized communities are often at the forefront and the most impacted by those cyber laws. So also a huge hi to the indigenous communities that are joining us today, hi Phnom and others. I know that you're very worried about the current digital rights state in Thailand because indigenous people and environmental defenders are also being criminalized under those cyber laws for defending their rights, for speaking up to defend their land online. When you talk about all the rising also state surveillance, I would like now to invite Darika Bamrunchok, who is a specialist when it comes to really looking at state surveillance and technology in the human rights defense under authoritarian regime. So Darika works for Security Matters as a community manager, and she previously works at Engage Media, where she was the leading digital rights and safety program leader for Thailand and the Mekong region. She's an experienced campaigner, and as I said, she focuses on state surveillance. So Darika, we saw that last year in November 2021, there were Thai politicians, activists, academics that were notified of possible state-sponsored attackers on their phone. They were notified remotely, and they were notified by Apple devices. And so they were specifically attacked because of who they are and what they do. So if you could tell us a little bit more about the online state surveillance and related digital harassment tactics against civil society and human rights defenders broadly in Thailand, and specifically with reference to Pegasus. It would be great if you could also touch on the growing state-led disinformation propaganda and campaigns against human rights defenders, the cyber army and trolls, and what are the tactics that they are using to target and discredit human rights defenders online. Over to you, Darika.
Thank you very much, Emily, and hello everyone as well. So yeah, our today's section that I would like to focus on the surveillance technologies and then how these authoritarian practice and tactic underpin the ecosystem of the digital authoritarianism by look at Thailand as a case study. So, but I would like to start with the political context in Thailand in the last 8 years after the military coup in 2014. Although we have the election in 2019, but Thailand still under the pro-military government that where is the current prime minister is the same person that who lead the military coup in 2014. I mentioned about the political situation here because like when I'm thinking about any digital policy, any new technology are introduced to the country, we have to remind ourselves that how those technology and the digital policy that will be implemented under military mindset with the weak like rule of law in the country. So I'm sure that panelists from CRCF will give more example in the Deep South. But now I would like to focus and then look at into the broader surveillance practice in Thailand and what kinds of tactics, tools that authoritarian regime could use to spy on their own citizen. When we talk about like own citizen, of course, that different country, I mean the government or state have perceived the different type of the target. Of course, in Thailand, human rights defender, pro-democracy movement, civil society who working on human rights, I think that is a target under the current government in Thailand. I would like to start with the proposal of a single internet gateway idea that I think that's capture what the Thai government is thinking about the internet in the country. So on the 18th of February this year, the Minister of the Digital Economy and Society mentioned during the Parliament meeting that the Thai government is studying the possibility of using the single internet gateways as a tool to better control the flow of illegal information online. That is a message that Minister saying in the meeting. And during the same time that Cambodia is already planned to set up the internet gateway in the country. Of course, that the fellow from Cambodia, you can share more information in our chat. But back in the 2015, after the coup in Thailand, the idea of the national internet gateway was brought up by the military government, just as the model in China. But they confront the strong opposition from the various groups like against the implementation of the idea, especially from the business and the private sector. But however, that the idea of setting up the system and infrastructure like the internet gateway, and if it happens, it's not just about the internet censorship or the surveillance, but it's about the control over the internet by the government that can make all of the internet traffic by using the state control entry. That's why we have to push back against this idea. But however, although the Thai government can still not implement the single internet gateway yet, but we already, I mean, what we have seen that they already have the strong power to exercise control over the internet by using a number of tactics, for example, judicial harassment, as Michael already mentioned, by using the Computer Crime Act, the Less Majestic Law, Article 112. Along with many tactics of the surveillance. So I would like to start from the use of the low tech or the low budget surveillance as a tool of intimidation, such as the use of the IMSI or International Mobile Subscriber Identity Cacher, that to intercept the content or other data from the mobile phone, or the monitor social media or other platform for the purpose of identifying people or tracking their IP address. This observation that is include the collaboration between the government agencies and the internet service provider as well. And another case is like to install the GPS device on the car to track the activists or the political opposition. These just only the few examples of the surveillance tactic, but most of the case that we have seen in Thailand, I mean, the police just take their device, arrest the human rights defenders, and ask for their password to access their social media or laptop. Apart from those two, that human surveillance or information warfare is one of the common tactics that the Thai government has been using, that to set up the information operation that Emily and Michael is already mentioned, that or the cyber tool to target the activists and human rights defender in the country. What we have seen and increasing the pro-military social media accounts on Facebook and Twitter, and many anonymous accounts that is operation related to the online disinformation against the pro-democracy movement. But when we talk about the online content manipulation, it's very difficult to detect compared to like other methods of censorship like website blocking or internet censorship. But in October 2020, Twitter, announced to take down of more than 900 accounts that link to the information operation by loyal Thai army. And after that, Facebook is also have the action on that. As far as we know, this is like the first time that social media platform is take the action to remove the account that relate to the Thai army. The last one that I want to discuss here, that how the government invested in the expensive or advanced surveillance technology. Of course, that Pegasus is a spotlight to spyware on human rights activists and NGO. But long before the Pegasus, as Michael mentioned as well, like in 2013, Thai police got the spyware system from the hacking team. That is an Italian company. And later on that in the 2014, the Thai military also brought a similar surveillance technology as known that remote control system. So later than in the 2018, the Citizen Lab is also identified the Pegasus spyware operator active in Thailand. But at that time, it's not many people in the country that pay attention on this spyware until the November last year, after some of the activists, NGO workers, artists who use the iPhone and then receive the threat notification alert from Apple that is about like state-sponsored hacker. That is the first time that Pegasus became into the spotlight in Thailand. So the last part, that is kind of the final thought and my observation. When we have seen the connection between the digital violence and the real harms, like including the online harassment, surveillance, and the last one about the spyware, that is connected to the physical violation for sure, that what we have seen in the country. And then when the government can control the information landscape, that it can shape the political narrative in the country, and then it can relate to the public mobilization. And the use of the spyware or surveillance technology against the civil society, that contribute to the chilling effect. I mean, the experience of being a target of the surveillance can contribute to the psychosocial emotional distress for the people. And the thing that I want to mention about the unregulated, the surveillance technology like Pegasus spyware, that give authoritarian country who doesn't have enough capacity to do in terms of the spyware or technological level, to give the ability to do the complex or advanced spyware to their country. The last point that I want to make, that we all know the technology has changed over time, but the target usually be the same, because we don't know what sort of the technology in the future will bring. But we do know that the same individual, the same group of the people in the country that the government perceive as the threat are being targeted again and again. But the technology and software and like a digital platform is getting more and more advanced over time. So thank you. Back to you, Emily.
Thank you very much, Erika, for this very comprehensive overview of state-led surveillance and state-led disinformation. Thank you so much for also explaining very well and emphasizing on the fact that public order, national security, the work of human rights defenders is being targeted as an offense or as an attack against public order and national security, and that's why they are constantly being targeted by trolls and IOs. So thank you so much for emphasis on that. And that's also answered the question posed by Domingo from El Salvador regarding the troll center in your country. As Darika explained, we have the same in Thailand, which is the cyber army by the Thai government. I would like now move to a very important speaker for this session, because she is one of the human rights defenders being targeted by government trolls and by government IOs. Our next speaker is Phonpen Kontachonkiet. She's a human rights lawyer and defender, and she's the director of the Cross-Cultural Foundation, an organization that monitors and documents cases of torture and ill treatment in southern Thailand. She has also been involved in various human rights issues, both in Thailand and in the region, including women's rights, indigenous rights, and preventing forced disappearance. And her work when it comes to digital rights, really it's looking at monitoring surveillance and biometric issues in the Deep South, where Muslim minorities are victims of racial profiling. So Ponpen, could you please share with us more about your work, what you have been documenting in the South, how mass surveillance is targeting marginalized communities and religious minorities in the South, but also you being yourself a target from trolls and hours of the government. What do you think of the government tactic and how have you been resisting? Thank you.
Thank you very much. And can you hear me well? Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you very much for the forum. And I think it's an opportunity for us to review what has been happening in the deep south of Thailand for more than 17 years. And also it has also become accumulating way of how the government, which is military government, as is explained that we actually do not have a democratic government as such. We still have the military coup d'etat leader now, our prime minister. I wanted to go back a little bit about the law that has been used in the Deep South. We are still under the martial law, and the martial law is 108 years old. So you can imagine we did not yet have digital way of surveillance people or control the people. But in the Deep South, we have martial law. So the martial law can also be applied for anyone, and it's affecting the right to life and also arbitrary detention. So I would like to say that this physical surveillance, physical monitoring, which means army camp, checkpoint, army in uniform, or the warlike equipment has been on the spot in almost every junctions of the Deep South for more than 17 years, accumulating with the technology and the other thing that has been applying. So it means that we even have a double or multiple way of surveillance people. And yesterday we also have a small session talking about the situation in the Deep South. They feel like they are Uyghur in China from now, because the surveillance has been so strong. For example, people already been feared to be arrested because of the martial law. We also have emergency decree when people get arrested, you cannot meet lawyer. Maybe you can meet the family for a few minutes or 10 to 20 minutes maximum. And you cannot go to see doctor if you have any injury. So allegedly torture during the interrogation is documented by our organization and also by local organization. On that, every single one from then will be listed as a blacklist. So your name is in the some level of blacklist. It could be the list of small task force, but also can be listed in a national system where your name could be also been monitored when you go abroad, when you go attending the other international organization, international discussion. And even sometimes the list can also be sent around to other security officers, including my name. I believe that my name has been also circulating in among a number of security officers. So abusive and abuse of power by using backlists targeted individual, including women human rights defender, and also the young people who has also been now how can I say, they are seeing also the movement from Bangkok that is quite open in the past 2-3 years. So they have been following with the movement in terms of opening up their speech, like the freedom of speech, talking about the way of governing Thailand are more open to discuss. The issue around human rights has been more reported in the South and also accepted by some of the media in Bangkok, and also alternative media and cooperation with the youth in Bangkok. So they feel like they should have the same rights of the youth in Bangkok and be able to express their own opinion. However, along the way of these 2 or 3 years, there is a systematic of DNA collections against those arrested, family of those being arrested, and also applying to young men who are subject to the military recruitment. Around 20,000 young men has been collected DNA without consent. At the same time, there will also being applied the use of facial recognitions. The facial recognition approach to collecting the identity of individual in the Deep South are coming together with the access to telephone, mobile phone. So the National Broadcasting Communication Authority has actually cooperating with the military and controlling the telephone provider, doing a compulsory collecting the facial recognitions of the user of the SIM card to register again, even though every single one of us have already registered with our ID card. So 800,000 individuals in the Deep South alone, among 2 million people, has been collected the facial recognitions. Otherwise, their phone will be cut off. And this happened actually during the COVID time. So we actually took up one of the strategic litigation, and now the lawsuit is still pending. I would say pending because it's almost a year now. We haven't, the administrative court has not finishing their initial reviewing the court case that we find. So the phone has been cut off if you don't use the facial recognition program. And it had been stopped because some of the MP are actually calling for this policy of the military to be stopped. So luckily we are now not being compulsory to get the facial recognition, but the court case is still pending. I also would like to talk about the necessity of the use of those techniques that been used in the South. I think we have been declared under the martial law and emergency for 17 years. You know, emergency is mean it should be in short of time and it should be very special to apply all these special measure. But 17 years is too long, and I don't think that this necessity to use the special law, which is a tool to apply other digital or biometric use of the tool as for surveillance people, is necessary anymore. However, we don't have yet democratic government that actually can review the use of the martial law and emergency to cut off all this use of device, including biometric and facial recognition. And we have also facing a number of fake news. You know, Thailand as a whole is Buddhist country, and we also have a Muslim minority in the Deep South. That's how the conflict has started and has become the call for independent or special autonomy. So we felt like the fake news and also the internet information operation has also been using the dynamic in order to dividing the group of people. So we have also fake news or misinformation, disinformation from the Buddhist group, can also be from the locality and also from the nationwide, attacking the way of life of Muslim. But at the same time, we also have a group of Muslim that actually using misinformation and disinformation in order to protecting their identity, but also in a way that is attacking the Buddhist community. And so there is also the issue in relation to the identity within Thailand, and some of the case has been protected by law, by authority, for example, wearing hijab or using the halal food in some of the hospitals. But it's again, it's an element that I would like to share, that it's not only one way that authority use. They always use multiple way, and in the Deep South, the environment in general is more on physical safety and also militarization. In terms of biometric and digital surveillance, I think we're still lacking of knowledge and also expertise in order to really understand how much of the threat has been actually placed on us. But in general, people are feeling fear and distrust and wanted to have more freedom in a way that they can actually challenging some changes within this almost 20 years of conflict. I think I would end now. If you have any more questions, we can actually adding on. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Binoy. Thank you so much. We'll take the questions during the Q&A session. There has been a lot of questions in the chat, so don't worry, there will be definitely questions coming up. When you talk about the security laws in the Deep South, this is a very particular situation in Thailand. And I wonder whether the new legal development that are happening in Thailand obviously are going to have a greater impact in the Deep South. But there are also some little bit of hope, I guess, with the new Personal Data Protection Act that finally entered into force on the 1st of June of 2022, which is being seen by some people as filling the gap of human rights protection in Thailand. But is it really going to do that? Because as we heard by all the speakers before, there is increasing state mass surveillance, increasing criminalization of human rights defenders who are speaking the truth to power, of youth activists, of the media, of religious minorities being targeted as well by racial profiling. So we are lucky to have with us Professor Titirat Tip Samrinkut from the Faculty of Law at Thammasat University, where she teaches public international law, human rights law, media, law and technology. And her current research focuses in the areas of freedom of expression, privacy, and internet governance. Professor Titirat also serves as a legal expert in the Personal Data Protection Commission under Thailand's new Personal Data Protection Act, which just entered into force at the beginning of this month. So Professor Titirat, you played an instrumental role in lobbying the Thai government. You were part of the civil society movement to lobby the Thai government to adapt a Data Protection Act to really bridge the gap of the lack of protection of our data online. Can you please share with us and wrap some of the advocacy strategies that you focus on to make sure that data privacy and transparency issues are tackled in Thailand? What was the narrative that you use, knowing that we are under an authoritarian government that doesn't want to hear about human rights? And also, if you could also share with us, what do you think? What are your thoughts regarding the possible authoritarian government tactics of misusing privacy protection? Because as we said, the more laws that what we have noticed in the past years, and Michael already talked about it, is that there's a proliferation of cyber laws under the name of national security, under the name of protecting public order, but those laws are being misused. So it would be good also to hear from your side, what do you think an authoritarian government like Thailand could do when using the Data Protection Act? So over to you, Professor Titirat.
Thank you very much, Emily, and thank you for all the previous speakers. Since I think what I'm going to talk will kind of fill the gap what we were talking as well. Just for your information, that apart from my academic role, I also serve as a chairperson of Amnesty International as well. So I kind of like try to bridge between the business economic side of personal data protection and also like the privacy right protection side of this issue. Okay, so let me start from how the PDPA fill the gap and human rights protection and also like the rise of digital authoritarianism that we have been talking about. So I and other civil society see the potentials of PDPA, even though it aims to protect the personal information being used mostly by the business, but these law also apply to the governmental sectors as well. So we hope that it will raise the standard of personal data protection. And these will also help at least two things that will help to improve the situation. First, for the private sector, PDPA will force the business sector to deal with governmental requests in a more proper way. So up until now, most of the governmental requests for personal data was done in a very informal way. Like some authorities might just call to telecommunications company and ask them to share information informally. So those are already prohibited by PDPA right now. Of course, it was not like 100% legal before PDPA, but now that we have PDPA, these informal sharing of information will be illegal. So then PDPA will give the private sector some cues to say no to the government, and also even if they have to share those personal information, they need to have the records, and this will push the government back so that they have to provide some proper legitimate reason or proper legal basis for accessing those personal data. So that is the first thing that the PDPA can fill the gap. The second thing is about the data governance within the government sector itself. So I have to say that actually personal data within the government side was already under the law, under was already under some protections of law. And so we have this Official Information Act, which mainly lays out the right to information within the governmental sector. So for example, media can ask for the access of data within the government side. But within the same law, there is this personal data protection chapter that government has to maintain the security and also to use personal information only within the scope of necessity. However, this law was not enforced very well in this personal data. This law only had the mechanism of enforcement for the right to information part, not for the protection of personal data. So with PDPA, this law must be improved. So we expect that the data governance within the government side, they will have more better standard in protecting data. And then because PDPA provides some specific rights for data subjects, so each individual can ask directly for the government what kind of data they are using. And of course, the records must be made more transparent. That is in theory of the law. Okay, so those are the idea how PDPA will fill the gap. But then, as Emily said before, about the advocacy strategy of this PDPA, it was not done with the human rights language, I have to say. So at the very beginning, most narrative of PDPA was done in economic language, so just to say that, okay, we have EU PDPR and many companies have to comply with GDPR already, and this will create burden for these companies, so they will have less competitions comparing to the other domestic company in Thailand. So we brought in this company that have more international business to push for PDPA, and so it means that we advocated, we used the argument of international trust, that Thailand has to improve its standards to meet the international requirement, international trust, rather than using the domestic trust argument. So in that sense, people in business and governmental sector didn't really see PDPA as a human rights protection law from the beginning. But once it was passed, it is very interesting to see that government started to use to talk about PDPA in the human rights language, saying that these will protect people privacy and also how we improve the data governance. So which is, I don't think it is accidental. It is easier for government to talk in that way, and then we write on that narrative. So little by little, the trust argument, the domestic trust arguments was brought in, and people talk a lot more about data subjects' rights, not only how PDPA will make Thai business becoming more competitive. So in this sense, I see that PDPA advocacy representing the way that economic values, economic arguments go hands in hand with human rights values in this sense. But of course, there are pros and cons of using this kind of economic narrative because people will see more of the economic interest rather than how it will protect people's rights, right? And then we rely very much on the example of Western law, the international pressure, especially economic pressure. So then if the socio-economic or political economy change in this country, right now we rely a lot more on American and European business relation. But what if it shifts to China, for example, then this kind of narrative might not be useful anymore. So that is something that we see as the cons of using this kind of narrative. But for now, it was useful. And for the authoritarian tactics, so now the law is passed, people became aware, and then business changed the practice. But at the same time, we can see that there are some authoritarian tactics to use this law. For example, there were some attempts to create misunderstanding to devalue PDPA, or to use PDPA that this will prevent a journalist from doing investigation or investigative piece. And but there were also at the same time a lot of academics and a lot of business practitioners who understand the law already correct these misunderstandings. That's what we've seen in the last 2 weeks. And also some governmental agency use the law as an excuse to prevent open government or open data, or even to disclose the information that should have been disclosed under the right to information within the governmental site. So these are the tactics, and what we see as how to solve how to prevent the authoritarian use of this law is, of course, we have to increase more understandings. What is the aims of this law? And also within the governmental side, there are also some efforts to increase the KPI to increase the understanding that opening data of the government and protecting privacy is not the versus. So we don't have to choose between opening data or protecting privacy. It is something that can go hands in hand together, and you just have to know how to do it. So this is my short observation and analysis of what is happening within like this through 2-3 years of PDP advocacy. I'm happy to take any questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Professor Titirat, for all your insight on the PDPA and the narrative, economic narrative that you push forward to have the law in place, and the different concerns that might arise because of the current authoritarian government. There has been a lot of questions, and we have 10 minutes left for a Q&A. Michael tried to answer most of the questions directly in the chat already. So I'm really gonna focus on the questions that haven't been addressed by Michael yet. And those questions are really related to how do we resist state surveillance. I see Elizabeth and other people asking the same question, especially from a discussion that happened yesterday talking about Southeast Asia, and this impression that digital security is not taken seriously by civil society or human rights organization in Thailand or in the region, which is a little bit sad, because I know that Darika and others and I and many others in the panel have been trying our best, to train people and defenders on digital security, but the government is so good and the state tactics are increasing to target human rights defenders. So the question that I would like to ask the panelists, following on all the questions that we see, is what are really the tactics that we have? We see the PDPA is in place, but it might be misused. What are the strategy that you would like to see forward in terms of what are the strategy that you would like to see forward in Thailand when it comes to protecting our data and pushing back on the authoritarian government, the tactics that you would like to see at the regional level? We see a discussion about Cambodia and Thailand and the need to have coalition in the chat. And what are your strategies? What would you advise people to do in order to resist the rising digital authoritarianism in Thailand? So who would like to answer first?
I'll just jump in maybe to get things started, and just a quick comment about the digital security issue, and then maybe Darika wants to follow on that, or anyone obviously on the other points you just raised. I mean, I think one of the problems, and I mean we see this everywhere, but a few of the problems is that there is still really a dearth of localization for digital security tools and tactics. A lot of the material that exists are developed by experts, admittedly, but experts living in Berlin or San Francisco or Seattle. And their concept of threat, their concept of risk is, it's informed obviously by consultation with partners and colleagues on the ground, but still it's based on people who are outside of a context. Not everything works, not everything is transferable to every country context. Police and other abusers have different tactics that they use. So the tactics you use for protection need to change and be localized. Also, it needs to be constantly adapting. And so, I mean, like, these are some of the challenges, certainly. And the other, I think, is, and I've heard a lot of this sort of, for lack of a better term, defeatism in conversations with human rights defenders from China to Vietnam to Turkey. The state is going to know what we say and do anyway, so why even bother? Our tactic is we'll just be transparent and we'll be fine, because we can't keep ourselves safe anyway. I mean, maybe there's a degree of validity there, that we are up against a much more powerful, better funded, technologically advanced adversary, but it doesn't mean that we can't obviously keep ourselves safe to some extent. And so giving up is obviously not the right approach, but also mitigating expectations, how safe you can be, what you can do, and realizing the trade-off between, not being 100% safe or 0% safe, but 80% safe and still being able to do your job, be an activist and secure. So I think some of it's also a matter of concerns on mitigating expectations and having a realistic understanding about what adversaries are capable of and the types of changes that you need to make to continue to keep yourself relatively safe and to be engaged in civil society activism.
Can I add on to Michael? I think the thing about localizing all this knowledge to match with the contents and to match with what is going on in the situation, like in the Deep South, is very important. I think Darika and has been trying to understand also what is happening in the Deep South, but due to the situation, the language, and also the strong militarization, I think we need some kind of experts and probably some fundings that actually can go along with these new technologies. I think we are simply wanted to use technology, but we don't really know it could be threat and intimidation. But if it happened, we will face it. So that is not enough. So how can we really doing awareness raising on digital security? Simple tools And also media freedom is also important, because we need social media easy to understand for local population, and they speak Malay, they don't really know technology, and also human rights defender do not have enough capacity to also distribute understanding. So we need a whole lot of the project that also needs the support from donor, because the Thai government would not providing that funding to us to tackle the digital surveillance that they are also buying from other country to monitor us. So we really need something to counter that with the same equal hand.
I totally agree with you, Pinoy. There's a huge need of funding. It's not that people don't wanna. It's not that people don't want to do it. People have been trying to do it, but there's no financial support for specific technical good localization. And there's a real need to have translation in not only Thai language, but also indigenous language and not any minority languages. And there's a real need to be able to fund that. The Thai government, through the cyber diplomacy policies that they have at the bilateral level with Australia and other governments, are receiving huge funding and support bilaterally by other governments. As civil society, the support that we receive is 1% compared to the millions that the Thai government receive in support of the cyber diplomacy space. So I would like also to ask Darika to answer that question, because you've been working a lot on localization as well.
Yes, exactly. I totally agree with Michael and Pinoy Ponpin as well. I mean, like, as we see, but I try to keep myself like be positive as well, especially during the protests in Thailand, that we have seen the increasing the public awareness that the young people is really like active to do like their job and then localize in Thai. And also I think the one thing that I would like to add in terms of what I have seen during the protests, and then we see like about the network building between like Southeast Asia or East Asia youth activists like Beauty Alliance that we have seen before. I think that is very important behind the scene that for example like the activists from Taiwan and Hong Kong that help about like collect some of the English or even the Chinese, and then some of the Thai activists translate in our local language. I think in terms of like the tactic, and then it could be the sharing space between the activists or the youth activists across the regions. That is would be important to exchange the strategy among the activists themselves. I know that he's gonna running the time. Emily.
Thank you very much, Darika. And again, thank you very much for your answers. And also one point made by Elizabeth in her question is, how do we just not make it an issue of targeting human rights defenders? How do we make it an issue of public interest? How can we make sure that, you know, resisting state mass surveillance is actually a public interest issue? It concerns everyone, our parents, our cousins, everyone in the street. So, but again, in order to do that, in order to do broader digital campaign and inform the public, we need funding, and the government is already really good at shaping their own narrative. And for us to be able to shape our own narrative and target the public, we also need support and public funding. So it's at the end of the day, it's really being able to work all together and being able to have the financial means to do so. And a country like Thailand, like many other countries in Southeast Asia and around the world, especially in the global South, we don't only work with one language, we work with many languages. And so that's very, very important to take into consideration. We are 2 minutes left before the end of the session. I would just ask which one of the speakers to give us one last thought before we end the session. Professor Tichirat, please go first.
Thank you. So yes, to answer many questions over there, I think we can say that I have to say that linking the digital rights issue to like broader context, not only for the activists, I think we have to make it like everyday life issues. And everyday life issue of people in Thailand is not only about political issues. I know political rights is important, but still we need other aspects. And again, economic rights, economic inequality are something that is worth to bring in to the narrative. Yeah.
Thank you. Actually, we had 1 minute left, so we have to close, but my colleagues Darika and Ponpen already shared the thoughts and replying to questions. I would like to thank all the participants for joining our discussion today. Thank you so much for the amazing speakers, panelists, experts working very hard on Thailand to resist digital authoritarianism. The discussion doesn't stop here. You're more than welcome to join our conversation tomorrow that will be looking at also data protection, but more broadly in the Global South. Please join our session, How Can the Global South Protect Itself from Unchecked AI, Ethics and Data Protection? It will be at 8:15 p.m. in Thailand with amazing feminist speakers. And we'll be looking at also how the lack of AI ethics and data protection impact indigenous people and members of the LGBTI community. So join us tomorrow. The discussion is not over. Get in touch with the speakers through the RightsCon platform for any remaining questions that you have. It was a pleasure moderating this session with amazing activists, and we look forward to seeing soon for next session at RightsCon. Thank you very much, everyone.